Hello and welcome, everyone. Happy holidays. My name is Marianne, and I'm the Community Engagement Manager for the Elizabeth Dole Foundation. We're excited that you're able to join us for today's Caregiver Community Connection C3, presented by the Elizabeth Dole Foundation. Today's C3 episode, Hidden Heroes Conversations Caregiving During the Holidays, is inspired from the article Coping with the Most Wonderful Time of the Year, written by Megan Powell, Krista Pedersen, Carrie Fisher, and Dietrich Blasek. Before I get started, I want to mention to all attendees that this session is recorded and will be available in the Guides tab in the Hidden Heroes Caregiver Community, HHCC, or on the Elizabeth Dole Foundation C3's website. We want to shout out our Hidden Heroes Caregiver online community who could join us here today for this really important episode. And we want to ask you all who are tuning in to let us know where you're watching from the chat. So what's your city and what's your location? With all of that said, we will take questions towards the end. Be sure to submit any questions using the Q&A box or the chat located in the Zoom control panel, and we'll be taking note of all the questions to get them answered live during our Q&A. Today, we'll be selecting 4 winners from our participants during the episode. So to enter into the drawing, please engage with us in the chat. So of course, letting us know where you're tuning in from, or even just sharing your thoughts to the presentation and discussion that we'll have today. We'll also be naming our first 10 registered winners who will receive a $10 Starbucks gift card. So lots of very cool prizes for today's episode. Lastly, this episode features closed captioning. So if you'd like to disable it, please go to the live transcript button in the control panel and click disable auto transcription. And please know that it can be disabled at any time during the episode. We're so excited and pleased to feature our Dole Fellows, Megan Powell, Krista Pedersen, Carrie Fisher, and Dietrich Blasek today. Now, without further ado, please join me in welcoming Megan, who will start us off with introductions. Ladies, please tell us who you are, your stories, and the inspiration to writing this article that is now an incredible webinar. Megan, you can go ahead and kick us off. That's okay. Megan is just taking a moment and we see her beautiful frozen face. Krista, can you kick us off here?
Yes, I'm Krista Pedersen. I am the 2020 Montana Fellow, so I am joining from Montana. I am the caregiver for my post 9/11 veteran husband. And Megan, I don't know who came up with the idea for the article, but it's, I think, such a wonderful thing because sometimes it's hard to get our families to understand what we're dealing with and that it's not personal, and we need also to give ourselves space for it. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Krista. And as Megan gets situated here, just know, folks, that technology issues happen, right? And I'm sure everyone's felt the accidents of it all. Carrie, can you kick us off just even further? Tell us who you are, your story, and your piece of the puzzle in writing this great article. And now that's our webinar.
Absolutely. I'm Carrie Fisher, and I'm the 2015 Dole Fellow from Wisconsin, but currently retired and living in Florida. I've been married to my husband for 38 years and became his caregiver in 2011 when he was injured and sent back home from his combat zone. And I still feel like I'm trying to get the hang of it even a decade later here, but we're getting there. One thing that we really deal with a lot is working around his service dog at gatherings. So I'll be talking a little bit about that today. And also that we really noticed a lot of his hidden injuries like PTSD and everything that goes with that at family gatherings during his first years home. So this article is really near and dear to my heart because that's really what prompted us to get some of the medical attention he needed, but also created some very good allies in our families as we got together for different gatherings. So excited to be here. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Carrie. Thank you, Krista. And then we'll pivot over here to Megan and then Dee. Megan?
Am I back now?
You are.
Of course, our internet goes out at the house. So I'm now on the cell phone. So I'm Megan Powell. I am 2022 Tennessee Dole Fellow. And I guess I will call myself the ringleader for this. I was lucky enough to get to know the three of these ladies through EDF, and kind of leaned on them. I care for my husband who was medically retired in 21. So I'm still learning on this journey. But these three ladies I knew had been through a lot of the same things I had. And when it comes to family gatherings, for the holidays, they're not always fun for us. We don't always have a lot of fun, and we wanted to come up with ideas that would help, just small little changes, not turning the world upside down, but small little changes that would allow our part of the celebration to be a little better.
Absolutely. And I'm sure that everyone here, can to an extent understand the holiday stress, but also it's layered with the additional aspects of caregiving, right? And I think all of you have just shared so far. And I know Dee, you have, you have that same similar situation around caregiving. And so would love to hear your story and where you come from with this article.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dee Blasek. I am the 2014 Dole Fellow for Connecticut, but we live in Texas now. I started my caregiving journey caring for a friend in 2008, and that made it especially hard because not being related in any way to your care recipient very much limits the amount of support you can get. And it makes it harder when you're talking to their family because they're like, and what role do you have in this? And it can get very frustrating at times. Now I care exclusively for my husband, who separated from the Army in 2021. And I've just had a lot of time to think about how we could make holidays more enjoyable for us again, because it's hard to get to that point where you're like willing to tell somebody else that, hey, this isn't working for me, but we still want to be a part of this. And I think that's kind of what inspired all of us, is we want to be a part of this. We miss our family and friends, and we just want to be included, and we want to make sure they're included with our life as well.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dee, for sharing. I really want to note here that we have attendees and viewers who are caregivers watching this, who are, again, feeling the same or similar situations of it all, especially with whether the injury is physical or invisible, right? And when the injury is less visible, often enough we have family members who say, well, he looks just fine, but we all internally know that he is overwhelmed or she's overwhelmed with the holiday season, because there's a lot more overstimulation and expectations, traditional expectations to adhere to, and not always is our veteran okay, right? So this comes at a really important time. And again, I want to thank all of the caregivers who are joining us today for all that they do in serving their families, especially being the behind the scenes support for their veteran. We know that the holidays can be incredibly stressful. So thank you for taking a moment for your own self-care. And I want to note that this is a mindful coloring session as well. So if you want to print out some of those affirmation pages in the chat, please feel free, and then just color with us while we have this great conversation. With that, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen for this wonderful PowerPoint worked on by our fellows here. And then we can go ahead and kick it off. Megan, would you like to start us here?
Sure. So, like I said, we wanted to focus on just little things that can be done to make it easier for us as caregivers and make our holiday gathering fun as well. So, one of the first things, and I think the keyword with caregiving period, is flexibility. That in and of itself helps us. And one thing you learn very quickly as a caregiver is how to be flexible, right? But that's also something that for gatherings you can give us, is just the ability to change things just a little bit. And we're going to break that down a little bit later. We're also going to talk about gatherings, little changes that you can make that make it easier for our wounded warriors and ways to help them. And then gifts. It can be a really awkward conversation, we know, and we're going to cover that as well. And then finally, how do we take care of the caregiver? That keep in mind as we go today, the most important thing you can do is to take care of yourself, especially during the holidays. You hear so much about the stress of this season, and when you have the stress of caregiving already, the most important thing you can do is take care of yourself. So let's talk flexibility. Like I said, it's the biggest word within caregiving, right? So what can you do when holiday gatherings come along to help us is mainly be flexible. And I'm going to actually let Krista talk a little bit here about some ways that you can help.
Yeah, so that first one, some days may not work. We can start out the day with the absolute best of intentions. We can want to be around our family. And when I say we, I mean the caregiver, the veteran, whoever. And sometimes things just go wrong. And it does not mean that we don't want to see family. The veteran just isn't going to do it. And it's easier or better for everyone if we just say, you know what, we'll stay home today. We love you. We miss you. We're sorry. We don't have to say we're sorry. We'll talk about that later too. But it's just not going to work today. And that is okay.
It's so true that you're going to find some days that just don't work, and just understanding that is huge. And for us as caregivers, when somebody says, oh, okay, that's, we totally get it, it makes a big difference. So another way you can help us is maybe it's easier to come to us, and we'll let Dee talk about that.
Making it easier to come to us, I have two main reasons why I feel that way. The first is we understand not everybody wants to host the holidays every year or have the special celebration at their house. And not everybody may believe it, but even with the chaos that caregiving can bring, we love to welcome friends and family into our homes. This brings that sense of normalcy that we often don't have. We want to be a part of, quote, normal, as much as possible, but due to things beyond our control, we don't get that. That's often just a luxury. When we travel to other homes, whether it's for the holidays or a visit, there's a lot of planning involved. Medications, equipment, prosthetics, kids, locating the nearest medical facilities, even that can handle the unique needs of our wounded warrior. And that being said, as much as we love being surrounded by everybody, it brings up my second point, which is coming to our house means we need to know who's coming and when. Unexpected visitors can be very triggering because sometimes PTSD just gets in the way of having large family gatherings. And it's okay to invite just 3 or 4 people, or maybe just 1 or 2, whatever it is. But, caregiving can be messy and just plain time consuming. So popping over unannounced is definitely not preferred, not just for our veterans and their well-being, but for ours, because I am very crazy. I know nobody's coming to my house to judge. Are my dishes done? Is my laundry folded? But when people show up, I'm like, oh my goodness, no, this is not the way I wanted my house to be when you came. And I hear all the time, it's okay. We're not here for that. But it still adds pressure to me, which then my veteran triggers off of my anxiety. And it starts spiraling. And what should have been a great visit ends up just being very stressful all the way around. So sometimes it's just as easy as give us a text or a call, maybe even an email, whatever way you're comfortable with, but let's plan something. We want to be a part of this. And we especially want to see those people that we don't get to see often, but we need you to understand that we do need a little bit of warning. We do need to make extra plans. It's not just as easy as, we'll be there in 20 minutes. Sometimes we just need that little extra time to prepare ourselves, our veterans, and our family. So coming to us can often be easier than dragging around all of our extra baggage.
I love that. Flexibility is the key. So one of the other things within this is our hidden helpers, right? So we have a 7-year-old who literally, since I started wrapping presents, has been all about, Mama, can we open gifts? Mama, can we open gifts? But I know what comes with that. The excitement that comes with opening gifts sometimes can be a little bit much for our veterans. So one of the things that we ask is, I've been the one that's had to look at my child and say, hey, buddy, I know you're really excited, but daddy's having a hard time. Can we quiet down just a little bit? And if you hear us say that and you're at a gathering with us, if you can just do us the favor of recognizing that, hey, something's a little bit off here. And if they're asking for a little bit of quiet, maybe we need to give the same. And it's okay. We want people to understand what we go through on a daily basis. And as Dee said, some days just aren't good. And we've come in, we have to travel to do Christmas with my husband's family. We have to travel. And so we need, sometimes the day just isn't a good day. So if we're quiet, if you can help us by just quieting down, it doesn't, we're not asking for silence. I know where kids are involved, there's not going to be silence. But if you can give us just a little bit of quiet in the room, it can make a big difference as to whether or not our veteran can stay in the room or if they're going to get up and excuse themselves, which we'll actually talk about that aspect a little bit more later as well. So then that's how you can help us, by just offering flexibility. But then there's the actual gathering. We love the holidays. Caregivers don't lose their ability to love the holidays just because we're caregivers. It can be difficult, but we love to gather with you. Next slide, please. So what are the ways that you can make small changes to help us when it comes to gathering? One of the biggest is disorganization and chaos. And if I'm sure many of you are nodding your heads right now. So one of my husband's main triggers when it comes to really any gathering at all, but especially the holidays, is chaos. And I forget, I'll be honest, I forget in the moment when there are 3 or 4 different conversations going on in the room. I can block that out, but my veteran can't. And so I'll catch myself looking at him, and you can see the stress building in him. So sometimes it's as simple as, if we're all together, just making sure that if there's multiple conversations going on in the room, it's okay to kind of check and see, hey, does it look like it's bothering him? That's a huge thing. And then disorganization, that's my husband's big trigger. And I didn't know this until a couple of years ago. And the biggest thing for him, he says, is the wrapping paper on the floor, something I would never have thought about. But for him, the wrapping paper being on the floor and not going into the trash literally just triggers him. So maybe it's as simple as adjusting to, for instance, this year when we go, I'm just going to have the trash bag handy and go ahead and clean up as you go. Again, just small things. We want to open gifts with you, but we want to be able to be a part of it and be present. And it's little things like just disorganization that can honestly derail the entire celebration for us, because once they're up, we're not, as someone said earlier, when it comes to caregiving, anxiety can be contagious. So when his anxiety goes up, my anxiety goes up. So just little adjustments that can help. And then Carrie's going to talk about how you can help us when it comes to meals.
Yeah, I remember when I was a kid, I think back on family gatherings, and my grandma had this huge table that it must have had 15 leaves. It felt like it took up the whole entire space in her house, and everybody would cram in around it. And sometimes you'd have little seating assignments with cute little candy cane name tags, and everybody would find their spot and sit down. And that worked great back in the day. But after my husband came back injured, a great big table where you're all crammed together and there's no escape route was a very, very devastating. So when we hosted one year, I broke up the tables and I had like 4 or 5 different like folding tables that would sit 4 people at each one, maybe 6 at the most. And it was such a great way just overall to break up the room. My stress level went way down also. People could kind of sit where they needed to. But I also make sure that my veteran gets a chance to choose his seat. As all of you probably know, your veteran kind of likes to be able to watch the room, count how many people are coming and going, see the door, find his escape route, all that good stuff that if he can do that, it just makes him comfortable. So he chooses his seat and then everyone fills in around. But even for me, I found that I was so much less like claustrophobic, not being crammed into a table with like 30 other people around one big space like that. And the other thing that we started doing, if we have a buffet style, which a lot of times we do at holidays, just set everything up on the counter and you file through and get your food, to make sure that we had some of the essential stuff on the table that didn't have to be picked up, like the silverware, just to reduce how much you have to carry. If your veteran has a service dog, for instance, that's another thing that you're hanging on to, trying to get through the line and leaving enough space so either the veteran or the caregiver can get that plate for the veteran and get back and forth easily to the table. So those were some things that really helped us out a lot, is just breaking up the spacing, how people were sitting, not having assigned seating because then the veteran can choose where he sits, and then just making sure there's a good clean path for the veteran or the caregiver to get to the buffet if we're serving it buffet style.
Kind of goes back to the disorganization thing.
Mhm.
Little things. They sound so simple, and we just don't think about them. Um, this is actually one of my favorite topics. I'm going to kick it over to Krista, who's going to talk about the quiet spaces.
Yes, the quiet space is my favorite also. I think I love it for everyone. I remember when I was little, we had one family member that would always just kind of disappear into football, right? Thanksgiving and Christmas. And I also remember there being a lot of judgment about it. But as I've grown up and I'm a counselor, I totally understand that some people need that. And so I think that if you're going to host a holiday event, having even a known quiet space or a designated quiet space is such a gift because it is overwhelming. All the conversation, all the disorganization, the chaos, and everything. Just to have some place where somebody can go, stare at the wall if they need to, just enjoy the quiet, gather their own thoughts. Um, just have a break is such a gift, and no judgment, right? You need a break, you need a break. We're not used to being in an environment with 10 to 20 people in it, plus I don't know how you do your holidays. And so it is an out of the ordinary experience that generally speaking our veterans are going to struggle through a little bit. And then like we've talked about, that anxiety goes with both of us. If the veteran goes into the quiet space and the caregiver follows, nobody's in there, talking trash. It's just, we're going to go take care of each other and be calm and quiet. And I may just put a hand on my veteran and not talk or whatever they need just to check it. We don't want to not be around you guys. It's just taking care of ourselves too.
And I
I
think
think
that quiet space is good also for anybody at the gathering, because I can't tell you how many times I've been with one of my kids when they were smaller, grandkids, and there was just so much going on that they were overwhelmed. And it was like just that 5 minutes away in quiet, let them regroup and rejoin the family and have fun with everybody and not ruin the afternoon with crying or attitude because they had that moment to decompress.
that was exactly what I was going to say. I think quiet space, as I said earlier, the whole world's stressed right now. Let's be honest. And this is a stressful time of year, and quiet space doesn't just apply. I know for us, we have my parents, when we go to my parents, they thankfully are only a little ways away from us. So we're there quite often. My husband knows that there's a room in the house and he will quietly excuse himself. Sometimes I don't get told. I just look up and realize he's missing and realize what's going on. And I'm sure several of you have that same experience, but he knows that there is a room in the house that he can go and nobody's going to bother him. And when he's ready, he can come back in. So when we do Christmas, I'll probably look up 2 or 3 different times throughout the day and realize, oh, he's gone. And when he's ready, the whole family knows, he's going to come join when he's ready. But what it gives us is it gives us the opportunity for him to participate rather than isolate. And that's a good thing. You heard Carrie mention service animals earlier. There's even more that you can do to help us with our service animals as well.
Yes, this is really near and dear to my heart. My current family dynamic is my husband and I in our retirement home with his current service dog, Freckles, of 2 years, his retired service dog, Lola, who he had for 10 years before she retired, and then my little mutt, Buddy, who we just love. So we have kind of a busy house with pets, and we're used to the difference between having 2 pets and having a service dog and what that means. But I understand that not everybody knows that. And Freckles, of course, goes with us everywhere because she's doing a service for him. She does medical alert for several different medical conditions that he has, along with the PTSD, helping him create space between him and the chaos around him, whether that's at a family gathering or in any other public access area. And I think the most important thing to remember is that probably that service animal is working her hardest when she's at a family gathering with a veteran. So it's really important for people to understand that this isn't a pet. So don't walk up to it and try to pet her and cuddle her and love her, even though she is like the cutest animal on earth. And you really, really want to do that because she needs to be focused to make sure that she's picking up on the cues that that veteran has going on, whether it's a heart condition that they need to watch for, a diabetic issue, or if they're just having a hard time and she needs to create some blocking space between him and what's happening. So that consider it really medical equipment. Like you wouldn't walk up and want to pet someone's wheelchair if they were in it or take a ride in it. Obviously, you would never do that. And that's exactly what a service dog is to that veteran. No matter what your experience is with it, that's really the truth. They're performing a task. It's okay though to acknowledge the team, acknowledge him and his dog, and comment on, how nice it is that she can provide this service, how great it is that he can get out because of her help. I think that's really affirming to the veteran to know that people notice that this is a good service for him. Allow space for the service dog if you can. Make sure that there's room under the table. It kind of goes to those table seating arrangements and why it's, especially if a veteran has a service animal, what's the best place for you to sit so that you're comfortable. It's great to offer water. If for some reason in all of our preparation, we forgot to bring that water dish, that would be a great thing, but don't offer food or treats and especially table scraps. And don't ever sneak it to that dog. There's still a dog. And even though they may leave it if they just find it laying on the floor, if you hand it to them, they're just going to think it's a treat. And it's really important to keep the dog's eating habits very consistent. And it's part of making sure that she can do the job the whole time for him. And the other thing is, as a veteran family, the dog is trained for public access. So legally, that dog can go anywhere for public access. When you're going into someone's private home, the rules can be a little bit different. And we personally just try to be very careful about if somebody is coming who is allergic to dogs, afraid of dogs, or there's going to be a problem, we try to just sort of offset our time and make that space too. So it's really important, I think, when you have a service animal to also be really cognizant of the people around you and how that affects them. And also be a little accommodating if you can, so that it works out for everybody. But even my 3-year-old granddaughter has a really good concept of which dog she can really hug and snuggle and which one she has to ask permission from. So I know it is very trainable in people to deal with a service animal. And they just help us take it, be a part of the whole family. So we really appreciate when people can accommodate that and help him be a part of the activities.
I love the thought of having a space for the dog. That means a lot. Carrie, there was a question in the chat, and I want to go ahead and ask you since we're on it. For first timers, with service dogs, and this is the first time they've seen a service dog at the holiday, what would be your tips?
Mhm. Let's say the very first year that we had a service dog, we kind of made a point of introducing her to the people there. So it was Lola at the time, and just explained what Lola does, what service she provides to my husband. So that just kind of breaks that ice. You don't have every person in the room asking you at different times all through the day. If you can just take that time to introduce, just like you would if you brought a friend to the event. And then also just kind of those rules. My husband's service dog has actually a queue to go visit. So if he's comfortable once he gets all settled and the dog wants to go visit or he wants them to be able to pet the dog, there's actually a queue that he's been trained and she's been trained to know that it's okay to go get a little love and then come right back and do your job. So it may be, if the veteran is comfortable with doing that, if they have that cue in their kind of set of tools with their service dog, that maybe they could do that just so everybody gets a chance to say hello, pet the dog, get it out of their system, and let it go back to work. It's really exciting to be able to share with your family what this wonderful little furry beast does for you. And I think it's, kind of take it with that approach that we are excited for you to meet our service dog.
I love that. So one of the things that we wanted to do with this webinar, and Carrie hit upon this, I feel like, is empower caregivers. We know these are hard conversations to have. And that's exactly why we hit upon this topic, was because we want to give you the power to be able to talk about these things. So please know, we're talking about these things because we've been there and done it. Doesn't mean it was easy for us to do. So we hope that today you find some ways to empower yourself to be able to ask for help. It's okay. We hear it all the time as caregivers, that it's okay to ask for help. It really is. And it's okay to ask for help when it comes to the holidays as well. So one of the things that you heard us talk about earlier was gift giving. And that sounds a little funny, I know, as to, well, how does that play into this conversation? So I'm going to let Dee take that one.
Every year for me, there is huge stress around the inevitable question of, what does Joe want for Christmas? After being deployed so many times and seeing whatever he's seen, he doesn't care anymore. He's got that attitude of, if I want it, I'll just buy it later. And some things he just appreciates more than others because he's seen the downside of the world. So he's seen the negative as well as the positive, and it just doesn't mean the same. So I just try to tell everybody, ask me the question. Don't ask him. Don't put him on the spot. Don't make him be the one who has to say what I want, what I don't want. Is it appropriate? Because nobody wants to hurt anybody's feelings. So if you approach him with, do you want A, B, or C for Christmas? And he'll just either answer yes, or he'll say, no, thank you. And that's the end of it. And he's not saying that to hurt your feelings. He just wants to get that part over with. He doesn't like being put on the spot. So I always tell everybody, don't be afraid to ask me the question. I will do my best to always find the answer for you, but ask me questions. And it's not just to do with gifts. It's to do with potential situations that we may be in, or conversations that may be happening at, our family gathering. So it's a little easier. And again, like we've said it, 1,000 times already, we all want to be a part of the holidays, but we have slightly different outlooks on life after being caregivers, after serving in the military, after dealing with injuries, both visible and invisible. And it's just different. And I don't think anybody who's ever experienced military life could see the civilian side again with clarity, because you've had those glasses on for so long now that everything is seen from a different point of view. And it can make people uncomfortable. Especially a good example is my mother, and even Joe's mother. They ask questions, but if you tell them the whole story, it can be difficult for them. So you have to make sure that when you're asked questions, you're prepared to answer, but you're also prepared to kind of pare it down a little bit as to why we're asking this or why we're answering the way we do. But gifts, conversations, and situations, just ask me first. I would rather be the go-between and relieve that stress between everybody than have something trigger him by mistake, because there's a lot of chaos going on, or just there's not that quiet space. These little things all tie into each other, and if you have a majority of them, it's going to be a pleasant holiday for everybody. It's just a matter of getting everybody on board and seeing why we're doing what we're doing without exposing our whole lives to everybody.
I think it's so important when we talk about, you ask us questions. We will answer them. We promise. Because we want, as Dee just said, we want peace. And sometimes it is as simple as not asking a question to them. I get the same thing. Now, I'll be honest, I get it for all of our family of what does he want for Christmas? But again, I would much rather answer it, because I can say something and suddenly he's not happy, because it frustrates him, the same as it does Joe. So those are the big tips for what our families can do. But then comes the question of us as caregivers. And as I said earlier, the most important thing you can do is to take care of yourself during the holidays. And drop it in the chat. How do you care for yourself during the holidays? Because we want to know, because what works for us is not going to work for somebody else. And you may have something that works for somebody else. Because I'm going to be honest, y'all, I am not good at self-care. So this question is hard for me. And that's exactly why I'm going to let Dee answer it.
Caregiving can be a very rewarding experience, but it's also very stressful at times. And whether you're caring for your spouse, a child, a family member, or friend, the caregiver is the one who keeps everyone on track every step of the way. And that is very stressful emotionally and physically. It can wear you down. When I hear the term self-care, I have to admit, I do kind of cringe a little sometimes, because I know when I say I need self-care, whoever is hearing it in the background is thinking, oh, spa day, shopping, or nail appointment. And I'm like, I wish I had time to go do all of those things, but I don't. Sometimes it's as much as just going to the doctor when you need to, or not putting off that cup of coffee with a friend, whether it's in person or virtual. Maybe attending a support group in your area. Everybody seeks support in different ways, so it's important to find what works best for you and stick to it. Just like any skill, self-care has to be learned, because I can tell you all day long, oh yes, just take 5 minutes to yourself. Well, if I'm sitting there for 5 minutes alone with my thoughts, who knows where that's going to spiral to some days. So you just have to find what works for you and practice it. One thing that I personally do to try to help with my stress is accept my limitations, which I am horrible, absolutely horrible at doing. And remember that I can only do so much at a time. So I have to ask myself, if I don't tackle this issue in 5 minutes, what will it change? And if my answer is nothing, then I'm like, okay, can it wait an hour? If still nothing life altering is going to do, it's like, can it wait till tomorrow when I have more bandwidth to deal with it? And if it's yes, then I'm like, awesome, tomorrow we will focus on this. My son calls it a future problem, and I have to agree with it, because it's not a today problem, because my bandwidth just can't deal with it. Really, I think we are all our own worst critics. So the problems or the issues that we face some days are more blown up by ourselves than they are by anybody else, or even by actual need or importance. Caregiving brought me closer to some friends and family and farther from others, but it also introduced me to a lot of wonderful organizations like the Elizabeth Dole Foundation, Military Veteran Caregiver Network, Rosalind Carter Institute, WWP, all those good initial organizations. But it also brought me closer to the Hidden Heroes caregiver community, where I've been able to connect with people that if I have 5 minutes to myself and I just want to chat with somebody online, there's somebody there. So that works best for me, but it may not work best for everyone else. So find what works for you and keep doing it. I think my biggest takeaway from self-care and caring for the caregiver is how important it is to have multiple avenues of support. because just because chatting with someone works for me today, maybe tomorrow that's not what I need. So I need another option. And it's much easier to have those on standby than it is to find them when you're in that moment of crisis. So just make a list of things that will help you, things you enjoy doing. And that way, when you're in that moment where you can take the time to care for yourself, make the phone call or grab the cup of coffee, whatever it is, and just enjoy the moment and know that, asking for help, is the first sign of strength, just reaching out. So once you've admitted that you need to take time for yourself, you're already halfway there to feeling better.
I love it. Different avenues. I feel like that one's so important because every day does look different. And what I need today, coffee was in the chat a whole lot, and you heard Dee mention it. Probably a cup of coffee is always a need, but maybe it looks different. Maybe it is just a cup of coffee, just me going to the coffee pot to reset myself. Or maybe it is seeing a friend. So we've asked for your ways of taking care of yourself. So it's not fair if the four of us don't answer. And I know Dee's kind of thrown hers out there. If you've got anything else to throw in, Dee, I'll let you. For me, especially where the holidays are involved, it's been learning the word no and recognizing that I cannot do everything. I couldn't do it before I was a caregiver, and I sure can't now. And so it's a priority. It's the priority of what is important, what do we absolutely have to make, and what can we get away with saying no to. The power of the word no. If you haven't learned it, I highly recommend learning it, because it is, honestly, we keep talking about empowering. It can be very empowering to use the word no. Carrie, what's yours?
Well, I dropped it in the chat too, but one thing I do is just carve out time for myself and actually put it in my planner. So Wednesday mornings from 8 to 9 is my time. And it may look like cleaning out a closet during that time, or it may be reading a book during that time, or making my Christmas list, or the list of things that my husband wants for Christmas that everyone asks for, right, Dee? So that they just have it proactively. It's kind of my time to empower myself, recharge, just be proactive for whatever comes next. But I write it in my calendar so that I don't make excuses for it. And I do say no around that time, like Megan said. How about Krista?
Oh, well, I am learning those boundaries. So, for instance, my family's on the East Coast, and every other year we travel as a family of 5 to visit over Christmas. And this year is the year that we're supposed to do that. And I said no. And I am traveling on my own after Christmas so that I can get a break, I can see my family, and I'm going to let you guys in on a little secret. When I did that, the world did not end. And my family still loves me, and they will take what they can get. And that's okay. We are allowed to protect our sanity. And coffee.
Coffee,
Always
coffee, coffee.
Seeing how that warm hug from coffee can just make everything melt away.
Mhm.
Exactly. Dee, did you have anything to add?
Just don't give up. If you're finding, trying some sort of self-care and it's not working for you, try something else. Reach out to the caregiver communities, reach out to friends and family. You never know what's going to make you feel better. And sometimes for me, just being able to help somebody else work through a problem that I've been through makes me feel better. So it's kind of like I get that nice catharsis of being able to help somebody, but it's also helped me because I just feel better at the end of it. So it's kind of selfish, but if you can get something from it, then it works, right? It's self-care.
Some of us have to pour into others in order to like ourselves. It's okay. So I hope we've given you something today that you can take to your family members or your friends this season that makes it easier for you and helps your holidays be better. Or maybe you've just picked up a self-care tip today. As we go into the holiday season, it's so important to remember that it's okay to take care of you as the caregiver. And Marianne, I think you've seen things in the chat, so you can kind of tell us what we've missed, if anything.
Yeah, absolutely. So folks here are, sharing lots of really great ways that they're taking care of themselves, from walks to coffee, to just even taking, a moment to yourself and finding a good moment, right? That's something I like to say, because caregiving it's difficult, right? And it can be challenging most days, but just having one, good moment to look forward to, or just to be present and enjoy, it always makes for a great way to recenter, right? So I'm so excited that folks have shared here, and know that they've taken so much away from this conversation. I know I have, definitely. With that, we're going to go ahead and move on to some Q&A here. So folks, as you're thinking about it, or just, even thoughts, please share, and we'll definitely have a conversation with you all. I want to kick it off here for the first question. And this is actually a common question that we see in our caregiver community. It's, how do you start the conversation with family about invisible wounds such as PTSD or TBI, and just asking for those accommodations?
For me, and I know all families are different, so please use this with with your discretion, because you know them better than anybody else. With me, my family is very straight to the point and blunt. So if there's a situation coming up, it's best to just say, hey, this is what we need. This is what I think we're going to need. Can we do this? And if not, maybe we'll have to stay back this time and we can come visit another day. Like I said, for me, it's just the straight approach works best.
Thanks, Dee.
Honesty
Other folks?
and honesty and be real. It's okay to tell the truth, because if they don't know the truth, they're not going to understand why you're asking for what you're asking for.
And I think that one of our hopes with this was the pamphlet and this. Take them the paper, show them this, let us do the dirty work.
And that's okay too. Like, I've had the conversation with my friend's parents because she wasn't ready to have that conversation. So she used me as a lifeline, because I'm like, I don't care if I offend your family. This is what's going on, and you need to feel safe too. So maybe you have a friend who can help you. It's okay to reach out for a lifeline.
I love that. That's really great. And I want to ask here, if you've made, the ask for accommodations, well, if family, doesn't want to accommodate, or they just refuse to understand, what would be the approach there?
Well, we've run into that situation where it's been maybe they want to do fireworks, and fireworks are a huge trigger for my husband. So we either maybe stop by for a little bit and leave before that happens, or we just explain that it's not going to work this year for us to stop by for whatever the event is. I still haven't figured out why fireworks are at every single place, every single activity that happens sometimes, but it's just that way, whether it's in their neighborhood or whether it's, something they do. And the other thing is, I think Megan hit it on the head. It's okay to say no. An invitation is an invitation and not an obligation. And that is like our family's mantra. Well, if I invite somebody and you can't come, I don't question it. And it's kind of we reciprocate that. So
I just noticed Tara in the chat mentioned that her family has kind of demonized her husband, and that's not uncommon, to demonize the person who they see as the problem. With that being said, I've not personally had that experience, but I have had several other caregiver friends who have talked about that, and it literally took them cutting off contact and saying, if you can't be respectful of us, then we cannot be around you. And they tried to do it to where, well, then you can come around me and they cannot. And it's like, no, we are a partnership. We are a team. So you may have to set that boundary. And that, again, that's the boundaries. You have to say, is this worth it to me? Is this worth the extra stress? Or maybe that does work for your family dynamic, where you go visit certain people, friends or family, without your veteran, And that's okay too, if that's what works for you. So it's kind of like everything else. You find what works for you and you keep pushing that way. And when it doesn't work anymore, it's okay. There's what, 26 letters in the alphabet. There's lots of plans to go. So
And I think along with that, Dee, it's like, what's our new tradition going to be? Like, instead of
Right.
making you feel like you're missing out because you're not doing what you think you need to do, what's our new tradition? Hey, we're home with the two of us on Christmas Day. What's our new tradition? And that's worked really well for us in some circumstances. Hey, we're going to cook a really fancy meal because we can. So I encourage that too.
same for us, our new tradition is ordering out for
Oh.
the holiday meal, because we have what, 6 kids, 2 grandkids with 1 on the way, plus their significant others, and it just starts adding up. And it's like, you know what? I'm not going to do the stress. I'd rather order out and be done with it. Cracker Barrel has been my savior. So do what works for you. Find that new tradition, make it work.
And I just want to say, oh, but I lost it. Where'd it go? We worry about these types of asks, and we worry about, am I telling somebody what to do? Am I making somebody do something? Every single one of us has a choice. So we are asking for this consideration. You have the choice of making the consideration, the family or whoever we're talking about. Whether or not the consideration is taken into account, then we get a choice on how we act upon that. And everybody can just respect everybody's choices, because we are able to do that. We're not forcing anybody to do anything. We're asking, and everybody gets to make a choice from that. And I want to leave everybody with a word that I think needs to be thrown out in the wind every second, every chance. Unapologetically. You get to make those decisions unapologetically, without fear, guilt, or shame. You do what you've got to do to protect your sanity.
Ooh, I just had chills as you said that. And I know folks are just resonating with what you just said, Krista. And that was my third question. It was asked, within our Hidden Heroes Caregiver online community. It's always something that's always asked, which is, it's how do you internalize? How do you not internalize those reactions, right? And I just love like your stance to just be unapologetic when setting those boundaries, right? I like to always say that you don't need to set up an electric fence, right? You just got to put up a fence, right? So just note that, people will have, their responses and their reactions, right? But at the same time, you're doing what's best for yourself, your veteran, and your families. And so that's as a result, these are the situations that caregivers have to just, take and be flexible, right? And that's why I love about your presentation where you all said, creating flexibility here. And folks are sharing here in the chat, about the shame that comes with it. And I want to ask, what are some pieces of wisdom that you have for folks that are, still kind of, it hurts to think about, right? The ostracization from family. What would you say to folks here? Just to kind of curve the feelings around it.
Just remember, you can only control how you react and respond to things. You cannot control anybody else, no matter how much you explain or try or how much emotion is involved. So any choice they make that hurts you is them. That's their choice. And you have the choice to say, this does not feel good to me, so we're not doing this anymore.
I always try to remember that this is also an emotional time for them, for everybody, sometimes at the holidays. And if we have had that kind of pushback, I try to reach out a couple months later. It's just end of January, beginning of February, there's just not that emotion around the whole thing. You don't have commercials forcing you together and all that other stuff. And those family members are still important to us, but it doesn't have to be at that time. And so we can just reach out, have that phone call, that video chat, or whatever, and touch base later when all that emotion and baggage is not a part of it.
I think it's important to remember that you grow on this journey. the beginnings are hard. It's just like it's not that much different than other things in life. The beginnings are hard, and you start to learn these are this is going to happen, and you grow in strength. And as you grow in that strength, you begin to have no problem saying, this is what meets our needs. And I say this from a place of this is where we are. These are our needs. And if you can't help us meet these needs, then I'm not sure there's a place. And it's okay. It's okay to get to that point as you grow. It's not an easy journey, but you will get there.
And it
And I think
definitely does take time because I've been a caregiver since 2008, and I'm just now over the past year or two able to say this isn't working for me. So don't think that if you can't do it a month from now that there's something wrong with you. No, because you still have feelings, and it's okay to have those feelings. You just have to let yourself have that grace that you're doing what's best for you.
And along with that, I think showing a lot of gratitude for the family that does get it. Gratitude just gets you so far in life. And just, there are the people who really get it in our life and really help us make this work for our veteran. And kudos to them. And I always try to show so much gratitude for their grace with us when we have to make changes, and also for just the accommodations that I know that they're making to make it try. And it helps model that behavior for other people too. So celebrations and all that stuff are so important.
Absolutely. Folks are definitely relating here on the chat. And so I hope, as the panelists, you're reading this and folks are connecting in so many ways. We are at the end of our portion for Q&A here. Just to be mindful of everyone's time. And so this is where I get to thank our panelists for their rich conversation, as well as their wisdom. And I want to thank our caregivers as well as our attendees for their wisdom as well on the chat, because so much has been said about boundaries in addition to just practicing grace and gratitude. With that, I get to congratulate our giveaway winners. So please email us directly at hhcc@elizabethdolefoundation.org with a good email address, and we'll get those prizes over to you. For our $50 DoorDash codes, I want to congratulate Michelle Chamley, George Lake, Tara Elwin, and Newton K. Please make sure to email us at hhcc@elizabethdolefoundation.org. I also have your email address, so you might just see that from me afterwards. And then in addition to our first 10 registrants, I'm going to go ahead and read us off here. We're really grateful that you could participate and have interest with us here. Heidi Woodring, Amy Tugwell, Patricia Salomon, Sarah Gong, Aaron Mary, Johnson Williams, Daniel Miller, Terry Bill, Karen Hall, Wendy Lawson, Anna Smith. We know that it's the busiest time of year, so folks may be participating with us live, or they may be catching the recording later. But we want to congratulate you all, and just thank you for being such a valued member of our community. With that, I am going to go ahead and close us off here and just thank you all for your time and sharing your incredible resources for Hidden Heroes. If you're not registered with HHCC, which is our online community, we encourage you to join our Facebook group for updates. Our group is an inclusive community for military and veteran caregivers of all service eras. So if you care for a wounded, ill, or injured service member or veteran, we would love to welcome you into our community. And of course, all of these wonderful individuals, and some on the chat, are in our community already, so you would be connecting with us. And you would visit hiddenheroes.org/register to get started. We also want to note here, holidays also come with the financial stress. So we've launched our Hope Fund for critical financial assistance. So if you need help around finances, please learn more and apply for grants. We have a criteria for that, just so you know. Again, thank you for joining us, and a big thanks to our partners at Wounded Warrior Project for helping us start the C3 series. We look forward to seeing you next year, and happiest holidays to you and yours. Thank you, everyone. Take care.